welcome all of you to this session, the Career Perspectives panel. So thank you very much to the organizers for lining up such a wonderful team of experts, and it's my pleasure to be moderating this session. So maybe just a quick introduction for myself. My name is Miriam, and I'm a researcher with the Canadian Forest Service, so with the Canadian Wood Fibre Centre based in Victoria. So it's definitely a fun position. So the structure of this current session is going to involve a brief biography of all the panelists, and then I will be asking each of the panelists to kind of describe their own career and to provide also any advice that they would have for students or postdocs and anyone interested in career planning in forest genetics. So after everyone has had a moment in the limelight, we'll go around the panel again to answer specific audience questions. So if you do have any questions, I would encourage you to please type them into the Zoom chat. And if you wanted to ask a specific question to a specific speaker, you can just write to indicate that, and I will be sure to pose it to them. And also, of course, I will be monitoring this, but welcome the panelists to keep an eye on the questions as well, in case one of you prefer to answer a specific question. But I will check in before posing a question myself, so you have the opportunity to choose. And to the audience, if there isn't enough time to answer your question, it is possible to carry the conversation forward in the chat. That's one of the advantages of the virtual platform. But the panelists have also all told me that it would be okay if you wanted to reach out to them directly afterward. So now it is my pleasure to introduce some of our panelists. I'm going to start first with Jill, and then I'll ask Jill to speak about her background. So Jill provides a very wonderful academic perspective. Her research mainly focuses on the genetic underpinnings behind local adaptation. And to understand the genetic basis of traits important to adaptation to climate, climate-related stresses and disease, her lab combines environmental data and quantitative experiments with genomics data. The themes of her lab build on her PhD at the University of British Columbia, as well as her postdoc research at the Universities of Alberta and California, Davis. Currently, she's an assistant professor in biological sciences at North Dakota State University. However, I'm excited to announce that her lab is moving to Penn State University because she just accepted the role of director of a center specializing in tree molecular genetics and silviculture. So congratulations on this very exciting next step of your career. So yeah, it'll be very fun to hear more about Jill's career and path. And yeah, if maybe you can just take a few minutes to explain your own journey in forest genetics along the academic path, maybe touching on your motivation and your path to the current position as well as your future position. And of course, it would be great to hear any tips you might have about recruitment or advice about academia and how to stay academically engaged in the field one may be really passionate about. So any advice really. So Jill, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Miriam, and thanks everybody. It's so great to be here, and it's just wonderful to meet people virtually, see people. I've just been enjoying this conference so much so far, so thanks everybody. So a little bit about me. I am originally from Manitoba, just outside of Winnipeg, very small town. And I got my bachelor's degree in biological science at University of Winnipeg. From there, straight from an undergraduate degree where I began to think about species distributions and the things that might limit species distributions, I moved on to a master's degree at Queen's University, where I got to pair my passion for conservation with genetics for the first time, and really began to think more specifically about kind of how genetic variation is partitioned across species ranges and what might that mean for conserving rare species, disjunct populations, and that kind of thing. And I completed that master's a while ago now. And then after that, you know, I thought I would go into management or something, but a little bit about me, I decided to take some time away from academia. Shocker, I know. And I moved for a little while to the Rocky Mountains. Worked at a hotel in Jasper. I worked in the evenings so I could hike all day. And I kind of thought what I wanted to do in the next steps of my career. And during that time, I found this super awesome opportunity to work with Ag Canada as a wheat breeder. And I was kind of fascinated by wheat because it's a allohexaploid, and it's just got so many cool genetics questions going on associated with it. And there were really cool ways to apply genetics. So I got this really great job back in Winnipeg, my hometown, working in Ag Canada as a technician, wheat breeder very briefly. And I spent 2 years there. And during those 2 years, I loved what I was doing, but I thought during that time, I really wanted to be the person asking questions. And if you want to be the person asking questions, you probably need a PhD. And so I applied for NSERC and was very, very lucky and received an NSERC graduate fellowship, and was very, very lucky to be accepted into Dr. Isaac-Renton's forest genetics program at UBC, and got to kind of expand into the world of forestry for the first time. And the reason that I was passionate about forestry, I think because forestry really pairs this conservation and application of genetics. Just the long-lived nature of trees requires that application of genetic tools and the development of new tools that are unique to forestry. And so I did a PhD thinking about hybrid zones in northern British Columbia, had amazing field adventures, got stuck numerous times up north in the Naskeena, where there's very limited cell service. And got to explore some beautiful, beautiful country. From there, I decided to continue and did a postdoc at University of Alberta, expanded my skill set, thinking a little bit more about physiology and more about trait variation. And from there, because I'd been working in genomics, conservation, genetics, physiology, I thought maybe I should learn a little bit more about model species. And I went down to UC Davis to work with Annie Schmidt on Arabidopsis, thinking about adaptation in Arabidopsis, and the size of the genome was very appealing to me at that time. And then I worked with Annie for a number of years, kind of developing kind of genome-wide skills. And from there came to North Dakota State University, which again is kind of geographically proximal to the family and was really great. And the great thing about it was a position that worked not only for me, but it worked for my partner as well. We were both tenure track positions, and that was really exciting. And then recently, I saw a dream job posted, and I thought I'd just take a chance at it to see if I might qualify. And it turns out I was lucky enough to get it, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. So the Hamilton Lab is moving east, and we're moving into new areas, and we're really excited about new opportunities to learn about eastern forests, to have a new platform to facilitate collaboration and training. And we're incredibly grateful, and I wouldn't be here without amazing mentors along the way, awesome friends, colleagues, and collaborators that have helped facilitate this. And then I could go on for a long time, so I'll stop there.
This is super fascinating. I don't want to interrupt you. I mean, this is very, very cool. You've got such a you know, a huge breadth of research expertise, and, you know, from wheat to trees, like from small to large. It's really cool. And also these different organizations, you know, Ag Canada and your secret life working in Jasper and hiking along. It sounds like quite divine, you know, it's really neat. And yeah, I mean, maybe do you have any advice for kind of, given that you've just gone through this new recruitment process and you've experienced all these wonderful positions along the way, you know, and of course there's a little bit of luck, but there's also a lot of building your own luck there. So if you have any advice on the hiring process, how to kind of follow your passion, and anything also about the negotiation, that might also be really interesting.
So I guess one of the big advice that I might give is use your network. Look at your colleagues that are in your labs right now. They may be your collaborators in the future. Raju and I are working on a project right now. I'm working with other people that are former Aitken lab members. And so using your network, staying in touch with people, staying connected. Social media has been a great place to meet new people as well. So I'm on Twitter, and I love when people are sharing papers these days over Twitter. I will admit I'm getting most of my literature from there these days, and it seems like the cutting edge research is often on Twitter, and if you share it, I'll be sure to look at it, because that's where I'm finding stuff these days. I do have advice with negotiating both positions, academic positions. I've negotiated a spousal hire for both positions, and I mean, the timing is important for these spousal positions. There's a lot of luck in that timing, but I think it's important to know the things that you need in your academic position. And for me, the spousal accommodation was something that was absolutely necessary. And so finding an institution that will support that, and working with them in the different ways that can be supported is really good. But knowing what you need going into that, I think, is really important.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jill. Now let's move on to Raju. So it would be a real pleasure to introduce him, because he provides the Canadian federal government perspective. So he completed his doctorate at the University of British Columbia, and actually I recently learned that he was there at the same time as Jill, so it's definitely a small world, and I think the forest genetics world was even smaller. So anyway, just a nice little fact. So Raju is a research scientist with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, based in Saskatoon. He is working in the field of tree improvement and is currently playing a leadership role in major cross-departmental genomics research initiatives. So I know a bit about what that involves. It's a pretty cool thing. And he's also leading and supporting several genomics projects as well. But in addition to the genetics and genomics research, he touches on many related themes as well, from tree physiology to novel phenotyping approaches like remote sensing, which has been a hot topic here, to impacts of climate change. And so in addition to this research role, he also has an operational perspective, because he's responsible for the operational poplar and willow tree breeding programs. So that is a very valuable perspective, I think, for this audience. But yeah, he's also the chair for the Poplar and Willow Council of Canada. So yeah, having this complementary perspective of both the research and operations, I think it's going to be very interesting to learn about. So Raju, I'd be very grateful if you could take a few minutes to describe your own journey in forest genetics, and then provide advice about the range of career options that might be available to students or postdocs. Floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Miriam. Good morning, all. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Well, my journey started in India. I come from a farming family, and so that encouraged me to go into BSc Agriculture. In India, that's a 4-year program. I joined BSc Agriculture. Then once I completed that, I moved on to do my master's at the same university, University of Agriculture Sciences, Bangalore, where I moved to look at the horticulture tree crops such as cashews and mangoes to look at water use efficiency and how various rootstocks would be a valuable resource. So looking at water use efficiency of rootstocks in mango and cashew, I completed. Then I was not sure what I want to do in my life. One of my teacher called me and said, "Hey, there is a 6 months short-term position. Would you like to work and you get to travel a lot?" I said, "Oh, I like it." And then I took that, and they sent me to northern India, a place called Dehradun, where Indian Forest Research Institute is located. And my job was there to look at literature search and collect or compile all the data so that in international climate change panel wanted like India to let them know like what are the standing forest stocks in India, how much carbon they can sequester, all those. When I started to read, I came across Canadian Journal of Forest Research. That was freely available in India because we don't have to pay. That's the beauty of these NRC press release journals. They're widely available in remote places, in remote libraries around the world. I started to read a lot about Canadian forestry publications coming out of UBC. And that's what fascinated me. Maybe I should do my PhD in forestry. It was just reading those literature that brought me to Canada. And all my friends were against because as Indians, majority of us prefer to move to US. That's how it works. But when I was moving that to Canada and forestry, they were like, "Are you mad? You are leaving agriculture and you are going to Canada and forestry, who cares?" This is 2004 discussions I used to have with my friends and seniors. Finally, I landed in Vancouver in Robert Guy's lab in the ecophysiology. And he didn't admit me immediately. I persisted with 3 emails. Finally, I asked, "Do you really like to take me or not?" At that point, he sent one sentence, "Yes, I take you." I still have that email. It was after 3 long emails. There was one short saying that, "Yes, you are in." And that began my journey in trees. And the fun part was I landed in November in Vancouver, coming from India, plus 30 to close to 8-9 degrees. From lush green trees to no leaves, all gray. I was like, "Oh, I'm doomed here. I don't know anything. I can't identify a single tree." And Rob was telling, "This is maple, this is that, this is poplar." For me, it looked everything dead. So it was really, really tough for me, November to March. What am I going to do in forestry? I landed in Canada. Maybe I will go back and things like that. As the spring came, I started to see the trees. So for that initial 90 days was a hell of a time for me to just figure out like, what are these trees? How can I work with these trees and all? Finally, I started my program in balsam poplar. And now I am proud to say that's one of the globally best collected material that almost $40 million have been invested. What I started as a small PhD project. Now around the world, the researchers, including Jill, who have invested some of the money to work on the balsam poplars and all. So now slowly after my PhD, I got job as a tree improvement breeder with Agri-Food Canada. Right after my thesis defense, I joined there. And I took up the breeding more as an accidental one. I used to tell at my committee that, "Oh, we can cross this. But I didn't made any crosses. So it was my supervisor who encouraged, "Don't tell, why don't you do it?" So I started to first time learn about breeding. And it was during my PhD, I picked the skills, and it was technicians who taught me how to collect branches, how to do breeding and all. And yeah, finally, I never realized that one day I will land up with that skill set to help Agriculture Canada to put trees on the agriculture landscape, mainly as shelter belts, riparian buffers, silvopastures, or tree-based intercropping. When you look at the climate change report for Canada, agroforestry is the #1 climate mitigator. So I'm happy to say that I can contribute to planting trees on ag landscapes. With that, I would stop.
That's so great. Thank you so much, Raju. It's such a cool story going from cashews and mangoes, you know, which of course everybody loves, but, you know, and then this story about the Canadian Journal of Forest Research kind of kicking it off and, you know, having a bit of persistence pays off. I think also that's a good takeaway. But yeah, I can definitely appreciate that would have been a huge change. But yeah, and then this position is really neat, and having you really learn so much by doing. So that's very, very cool that you took on that operational aspect as well. Maybe just in the interest of time, I should probably move on to our next speaker, if that's okay. We can go around and answer more questions at the end, hopefully. But yeah, now I'd like to take the time to introduce Marcus, who provides now the US federal government perspective. So he has also a very interesting research and operational perspective. He spent 2 decades working as a geneticist with the US Forest Service at the Rocky Mountain Research Station. And there he was doing really important work focusing on adaptive variation or gene ecology, bioclimate modeling, and evolutionary biology and impacts of climate change. But as of last year, he accepted a position as the regional geneticist in the southern region in Georgia. So congratulations on this new position as well. And in this capacity, he oversees the seed production and orchard activities that all directly support reforestation. So this new position is a bit more management oriented, but obviously still based in science. So his scientific background is just perfect for maintaining the existing programs, as well as leading new initiatives. So for example, he's interested in modernizing the seed transfer recommendations to cope with climate change. And this also involves conservation for a huge number of species in the South. So it would be great to hear more. I'm excited. And maybe I should also quickly note that from what I gather, there are a lot of really interesting things on the go. So students might want to keep their ear to the ground in case any opportunities arise in the near term. So thanks. And yeah, Marcus, if you have any words of wisdom, if you'd like to talk about career path in forest genetics and your respective roles, and you have this dual perspective, and any other words of wisdom for career planning, I think would be great. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Miriam. That was a brilliant introduction. So well done that I planned on introducing myself, and that just cuts out about 2 minutes you've given me to tell most stories. So yeah, I'm Marcus. I'm an optimist. I'm passionate about being successful in the work that I do, and I attribute most of my success to, or much of my success to, a sense of grit, like stick-with-itness. This iteratively getting closer and closer to solution space, but dealing with small setbacks all along the way. So yeah, that introduction is the introduction I gave for the interview for the job that I now hold. Which was just last fall, as Miriam pointed out. And that job is really, in a nutshell, I make sure that I'm delivering seed along with the team that I'm working with. We deliver seed for reforestation. That seed needs to be genetically diverse, genetically appropriate, and high quality. And we need to deliver that for reforestation purposes for the region. Our region leads the Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, in terms of timber production. So we're really busy, and we're very concerned with making sure that our silviculturists have the resources they need. The other component of my work is conservation. We have over 130 tree species alone in the Southern Appalachians. So there's a great deal of concern about those species that are of great concern or threatened, endangered, or what's the other one? Significant. In any case, yeah, we've got my responsibility is to make sure that we are working with partners, NGOs, and other groups to do ex situ, in situ type conservation on the ground. Also, I should say that Puerto Rico, we've got responsibilities there as well. And there's a number of threatened, endangered, and sensitive species that are of concern on the island there. So how did I get here? Really, I boil it down to 4 decisions. And one of them, decided to go to college and high school. Then the second one, in my freshman year of college, I applied for and was accepted into a government SCEP program. SCEP program is a Student Career Experience Program, and that more or less set the template for the rest of my career. So that happened in my freshman year. And I'll just say that is an opportunity if you are a US citizen, that's an opportunity, and you're interested in government employment, that is an opportunity that right now, while you're in college, I encourage you to get on usajobs.gov, fill out the paperwork, pay very close attention to the details for that paperwork. And because essentially in my experience, there are these small 2-week windows that occur maybe once every 10 years, so like very rare. But they'll occur during your career. And if you're in that system, there could be an opportunity for you to jump on these, and I should say college career, for you to apply for one of these positions. And that could really set you up for your entire early career. And that's really what happened for me. So yeah, I've been in the Forest Service for 25 years now. And really, I'll just boil it down to really, in addition to my grit, one other thing, and that's cultivating really good relationships. And in my early career, those relationships really are what opened the door for me to develop and progress further. So that was with my professors, my university professors. I have to say some names: Ted Willis, my Forest Service liaison, Dr. Comey, Dr. Donald Rockwood, both excellent geneticists. They saw the potential in me. And even when I wasn't quite aware and I didn't have the vision of what I could be, they opened those doors. I stepped in, did the work, and that led to where I eventually would find myself with the Rocky Mountain Research Station in research as a research support position. And there, again, really strong relationships with, fortunately, Dr. Jerry Rayfeld, now retired, leader in gene ecology in his field. I was able to gain a lot of not only technical expertise in working with him, but also confidence that I knew what I was doing because I was working with one of the best at what he did. From there, I made the third decision. That was to go back for my PhD. And again, surrounded with excellent students and a major professor, Dr. Ruth Shaw, who was, again, one of the best at what she does, which is evolutionary biology, looking at evolutionary aspects of prairie remnant species in terms of how they're responding to isolation. And so in that relationship, not only did I, again, as her student, work with her on a regular basis, I had the opportunity to live with her in her house and see how she was successful, how she integrated life with her success in her field. That is a really special and unique opportunity. And that's the kind of relationship that I would encourage you to try to cultivate with people who are extremely successful and have are a lot way further along the path, so that you can well, for me, I would, in addition to the grit and of course other traits, reach the success that you know, I hope you're striving for. Now I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marcus. There's a lot of really reoccurring themes here. The grit, I love that word, but it's also like Raju, you know, the persistence really pays off. So that is quite neat in that optimism. There was also this element of timing. I think that also Jill alluded to was really interesting, but also this aspect of like, you know, work hard and, you know, the doors will eventually open. Try and position yourself to be ready when they do open, like having these, you know, signing up for these opportunities. So maybe just quickly on that note, if I know Raju, when I was speaking with you just prior to this session, you mentioned that you had some really good links. So I think you posted them in the chat. And Marcus, if you'd be willing, you could maybe send a quick link to this back program. It sounds also very, very good. But yeah, a really wonderful overview. Thank you so much. You know, all very, very good advice and interesting to hear, you know, this huge area that you're responsible for. So very cool. But now in the interest of time, I'll move over to Greg, our final panelist. So after completing a master's in forestry, focusing on tree improvement at the University of New Brunswick, Greg worked in the field of tree improvement for 4 decades. He is now a consultant, but the bulk of his career was spent working with J.D. Irving. So J.D. Irving is a major and progressive forestry company in Eastern North America, and they manage about 2.5 million hectares of land. So you can really imagine the scope of their operations, including, of course, reforestation. So every year, just millions of seedlings are planted, and of course, they want to make sure that those are climatically well adapted and are of the best genetic quality. So for this reason, Greg and Irving have led research and uptake of cutting-edge tree improvement methods. For example, they've worked with, you know, tried to get faster and better selections through genomic selection and somatic embryogenesis. So altogether, I think this breadth and depth of experience, as well as this, I guess you could say that this drive, this continual drive towards innovation in industry and consulting, I think will provide a very interesting perspective as well. So yeah, Greg, if you could please provide a bit of background about your own journey in forest genetics and your experiences working in industry and consulting, and if you have any key words of wisdom for people doing career planning in forest genetics, that would also be great. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Miriam. I wanted to start by saying that this is a really good time to get into the forest genetics and tree improvement world. It's as good a time as I've seen in a number of decades. You know, we've got big challenges related to climate change adaptation, new opportunities related to application of genomics technology, and there's a widespread interest in planting trees. And if that investment's going to be made, it best be make sure you're planting the right trees in the right places. I'm coming to the discussion from an operational tree improvement perspective. So as Miriam said, I worked 40 years for J.D. Irving Limited in the tree improvement business. The company is a family-owned, vertically integrated, diversified forest products company operating in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and the state of Maine, with manufacturing facilities in these jurisdictions, as well as Ontario, New York, and Georgia. And as Miriam said, the company owns 1.5 million hectares of forest land and manages 1 million hectares of crown land in New Brunswick. The company has a long history of planting trees, and over 1 billion have been planted since the late 1950s. And the species include white spruce, red spruce, Norway spruce, black spruce, white pine, and jack pine. And I had the fortune to become involved in tree improvement right at the beginning of efforts in 1979. First involved in selecting superior trees in the woods, and through all stages of open pollinated family testing, tree breeding, progeny testing, data collection, data analysis, and was also involved through all stages of establishment and management of the company's 100-hectare clonal seed orchard and seed extracting facilities. So Of the more than 1 billion trees planted to date since 1958, over 70% at this point have been originated from seed orchards, and that's a big number. And using conservative gain estimates for growth, tree improvement efforts to date will result in millions of cubic meters of incremental wood volume at our rotation ages of 35 to 45 years. So this is at rotation, and that would be compared to the same amount of trees planted with no tree improvement. It also doesn't take into account the additional value of improved product distribution related to stem quality and in some cases pest resistance. In today's carbon conscious world, this is nothing but good news. At the same time, the genetic tests established across the region will provide critical information related to climate change adaptation. The climate gradient of existing field tests is greater than the projected climate change in the next 3 or 4 decades, which is equivalent to the rotation of the trees that are going in the ground as we speak. From a tree improvement standpoint, it's the foundation of our value chain, and the owners have been very keen to invest money in technology to speed up improvement. I've had the opportunity over the years to work with new approaches and technologies to improve results, and some specific examples that have brought a lot of satisfaction are things like implementing accelerated breeding strategies in the 1980s and 90s, development of varietal testing and production using somatic embryogenesis starting in the 1990s, testing and implementing genomic selection in the last decade, and lastly, developing endophytic fungi enhancement of seedlings to improve tolerance of planted trees to insect and disease attack, for example, the spruce budworm. And this is really just another form of tree improvement related to the tree's microbiome. Over the years, I was also responsible for managing silviculture and nursery production corporately, which provided a broad perspective on how the pieces fit together in the overall value chain. I'll make a couple of suggestions, some thoughts for early career stage forest genetics tree improvement professionals. And I'm just going to talk really about 2 things. The first being mentorship, which I think has been showing up here a number of times. And it's important for a number of reasons. And I feel very fortunate to have had the luck to have been able to interact with some of certainly well-known folks, people like Bruce Obel with North Carolina State, with Don Fowler and Yale Sung Park with the Canadian Forest Service, and Chris Morgenstern at the University of New Brunswick. And they were all good mentors for me, I would say. And then certainly lots of professional colleagues in the regional tree improvement co-ops. But the reason they're so important is, everybody recognizes that a mentor can pass on the knowledge that they've gained over a long time. But the second one that I think about is, if you're able to connect with several folks like this, you'll find that they have had different experiences, and surprise, surprise, they don't always agree, sometimes strenuously so. And this creates a really good opportunity to develop critical thinking skills, to be able to assimilate what everybody's saying and put it together with what you know about the biology of the systems that you're working with, and come up with your own view of the world. The other thing that mentors can be very good at is they can help guide you on how to communicate with people holding purse strings. Your proposal could be great, but you have to have a sense of what's important to the person you're trying to convince to invest in your vision. So that's another aspect of mentorship that I've certainly found very helpful. So my second suggestion is to understand where your work, whatever it is, fits in the overall value chain, and understand concretely what effect your work will have on the overall value proposition. And when I say a value proposition and value chain, I'm not necessarily talking just about dollars and cents, but you know, whether it's a conservation goal or whatever it is that you have. So as much as you can, quantify the potential of the work you're doing. And how do you do that? To do that, it's I always thought it was very helpful to make sure that you take every opportunity to learn about the upstream and the downstream of your work. This is useful no matter if you're a genomics researcher in a lab or if you're the manager of a seed orchard. Take every opportunity that presents to go to the field, nursery, or visit operations in other places and ask lots of questions. This will give you a much deeper understanding of the value chain you're in and provide context for your particular work and hopefully lead to a very satisfying and successful career in the genetics and tree improvement business. So with that, I'll stop.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Greg. It's really neat to hear more about all the work that you were involved in and the success there, you know, these shorter rotations and the volume gains, the carbon and the climate impacts. It's very, very neat. And thank you for these suggestions of the mentorship and critical thinking and so on. Maybe, I know we're running a bit low on time. We've got about 5 minutes left, but we could do a really rapid fire approach to answering questions, maybe starting with Jill. And then I don't know if there was a specific question you wanted to ask, or do you want me to just pose one? There's one that floated up to the top with several likes, but I'll let you choose if you prefer, or would you like me to? Okay.
Sure. So it looks like one of the questions is, what are the skills and qualifications NGOs, botanic gardens, arboreta, zoos are looking for when hiring conservation biologists and geneticists? And admittedly, I'm not an NGO, so I can't directly speak to this question, but I work with a lot of them. And my sense is that data analysis, the development of those genomic skills, because increasingly those bioinformatics skills I feel are invaluable in this field, particularly as it is expanding in conservation, and developing some of those analytical skills to perform some modeling for different collections approaches. So if you're thinking about in situ, ex situ collections, how do we approach those for botanic gardens? How do pedigrees or how are they incorporated into what they do? So maybe it depends specifically on the job associated with the NGO, be it at a different venue, but from a genomics perspective, those data analytical skills, the genomics capacity, building that up, those skills, and definitely using your network of people to reach out to the people that maybe have those jobs and ask them, what did you need when you got that job? What are the kind of things that you might want in hiring a person? So I would say reach out to those people as much as possible.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Jill. Marcus, I see that there's a question specifically aimed for you. If you want to take a minute to answer that. The question is from Beth, and it says, if you didn't get that early start with the US Forest Service, can you still get a foot in the door for a forest genetics position? If so, what would your advice be to do so?
So absolutely. Good question, Beth. Right now, I did a search 2 days ago, and I just went into USA Gov. I punched in genetics, and there's a position not in the Forest Service, but in another land management agency for that skill set in terms of plant genetics background. I can tell you that right now on the books, we're looking to, or we're hoping that we're going to get openings for NFGEL, the National Forest Genetics Laboratory in Placerville, California. Right now, we've only got a technician there, and we're hoping to staff 2 more positions there. And also there's a national lead. We still need a national lead position in Washington. And as Greg was kind of alluding to, there are initiatives right now on the books where at least they're bouncing around these initiatives that are indicate the potential for a huge amount of hiring in this field to meet the amount of planting that's being proposed, hiring in genetics. So in a nutshell, what you really want to do is get on USA Gov, get your application in, get your automatic searches going, and then you've got a network. I was on USA Gov following my PhD. I applied for, I think, north of 40 applications. I only got one interview in all that time. And then I got the interview for the position I have, and the interview for the position I had was through networking. So getting that cold application in, that's just one part of it. You got to do the calling. You got to follow up and interact with people. Volunteering's good. I mean, ideally, you want to be in the presence of the people who are making the decisions in advance of the position even ever being advertised. So you've got to get the networking in government circles. And I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Yeah, we're almost out of time. I think we've got like 30 seconds left, so I'm afraid I should probably wrap it up. But yeah, there's so many other really good questions. We can stay in the chat and keep typing so that we can share ideas, because I know Raju and Greg Adams will definitely have some very good perspectives on some of these questions, like about the forest genetics consulting, that there's definitely a lot of good opportunities there. But if I think because we're right on time, so I just wanted to say thank you very much to the panelists again, and also to the audience for attending. You know, it's a shame we're out of time, but we'll see you around the conference. So thanks again.
Thank you.